Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Marco, and in this edition, Brazil is pledging to end illegal deforestation by 2030, an ambitious environmental pledge. But campaigners say it's state-sponsored bulldozing of the trees to make way for factory-scale farming that represents the real problem. In President Jair Bolsonaro's first year in power, 2019, deforestation in the Amazon rose by 34%. Since January this year, an area equivalent to the size of New York City has been lost in the rainforest. Bolsonaro's administration cuts funding to environmental agencies and removes protected status of forest areas, while green-lighting agricultural development. The Amazon region is now emitting more carbon than it absorbs. The balance has already been tipped towards global warming. In the state of Rondônia, Brazil's unsustainable development is all too alarming. Fanny Lotter and Tim Vickery with this.
We're at the gates of the Uru-Il-Wauwau Indigenous Reserve. For Bitate and his family, going back to their village is always a risk.
Another fence. We have to cross this farm to access our territory. And here it is. It's closed.
The access road, although public, is blocked by the farmer who appropriated the land, which encroaches into the reserve.
All the land you see in the back is ours, but it's overrun. He closes the doors to prevent the environmental police from coming in to check. So if the police ever gets here, he can say he's not doing anything wrong, that he's only protecting his pastures. The state is doing nothing to stop it, and we can't even access our own land.
Over the last few years, this farmer has gradually invaded their forest, turning it into pastures and encroaching ever more on the Uru-Il-Wauwau Reserve. A little further, accessible only by air, we discover this piece of land, which was deforested just a few weeks ago. In the region, this farmer is not the only invader. On the road leading to another entrance to the reserve, the forest, supposedly protected by law, is devastated. Our camera must remain discreet.
They can believe your camera's a weapon, and they can shoot us. They're crazy, they've already killed someone here. We must always be very careful when entering and leaving our land. We feel the pressure mounting, yes. I think that some invasions have been successful in other places, so they're thinking, why not here? And it just keeps on increasing.
There are only the Uru-Il-Wauwau guards to patrol nearly 2 million hectares of their reserve, and all they have to defend themselves are these bows and arrows. After 2 hours of walking, they show us the graveyard of ipe trees, a precious wood highly prized by smugglers. The strategy is always the same. The woodcutters are preparing the ground here for another farmer.
It's a certainty that everything you see here is going to turn into a farm in a few years. For sure, they'll cut everything down and it will become a huge farm.
They cut down the trees and set the land on fire to erase their traces and to prepare the ground for the farmers waiting on the edge.
On the Bolivian border, in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, the state of Rondônia has already lost more than 40% of its native forest to agribusiness, a sector whose interests are ardently defended by President Jair Bolsonaro. Since his election, the region has seen a record of invasions of indigenous lands and public parks. On these videos posted on social networks just a few months ago, farmers boast of their settlement in a public forest.
Sejam todos bem-vindos aqui no meu canal, Jacundá, a Terra Prometida, aonde nós vamos mostrar para vocês o dia a dia de assentamento.
Even offering land for sale.
Você quer ganhar uma terrinha aqui também? Me chama aqui no privado aqui, ó. Vou deixar meu contato aqui.
Houses, churches, whole villages of settlers structured in associations. who are prepared to defy the authorities who've come to expel them, and even hire lawyers to defend their interests.
This trip is very important. It's been 3 months since I came, and my clients are impatient to see me.
For 2.5 years, Renan Maldonado has been representing a small group of farmers on the edge of the Guajará-Mirim Forest Park. He arranged to meet them in this village.
Tranquilo? Tranquilo? E aí, tudo bem? E aí, tudo bem?
He's the lawyer for an association of some 40 families who'd occupied plots of public land on the edge of the park for several months. They were evicted by the environmental police last June. The public prosecutor accused Renan Maldonado of being the head of a criminal organisation which allegedly sold them these plots. According to him, an injustice.
We've all been through this tragedy. Personally, and I know you've heard about it, I've been investigated. We've been called criminals when our fight is totally legitimate. They claim I divided the land into allotments and that I sold them to you. And you know that's a lie.
But he has good news for them. Members of Parliament in Rondônia approved a package of laws a few months ago that reduced 2 of the state's largest parks to their smallest ever size. Thousands of hectares now available for agriculture, and the land they claim could be included.
This law, if sanctioned by the governor, God willing, will allow you to farm on these lands. The law affirms that the region should be an ecological corridor, which would allow animals to circulate.
Isn't that the case?
No, it no longer exists. Everything is occupied and deforested. To speak of an ecological corridor makes no sense.
It's not only our lawyer who supports us, it's the state. It's the president of our country who is defending us. Because the left, before, it gave us nothing.
While waiting for the governor of the region to give his agreement, the families have kept the pressure on by building this makeshift camp a few kilometres from their land. The justice system forbids them to return there for the moment, but they wanted us to see.
We are going to show you how much we went to great lengths to be able to cultivate and live there.
After half an hour by motorbike, in the heart of the forest, Rogério and his relatives guide us to what they call their promised land. For them, they were the victims of police persecution. We must be quick. The park officers can come back at any time.
They gave us no chance to make use of this land. It's public land. It's ours. We just want to work. Look where we lived. My house is on the plot next door. Here was my neighbour's land. It is completely destroyed. He had 20 hectares.
For them, this land is theirs by right.
They say we are destroying the forest, but that's not true. We're just workers. We just need a place to live. We have nowhere else to go.
To fight against these invasions of public lands, the resistance is organising. In Porto Velho, the state capital, we find Petate at the headquarters of Canindé, the Association of Indigenous Peoples. The young leader has just returned from COP26 in Glasgow, where he denounced what is happening in his region.
I'm looking at the latest invasions. It's serious.
With him, Neginha, the head of the NGO, records each of her discoveries on this map.
In native land, all you see in red there are invasions. This invasion was just last week.
It's very big.
Neginha denounces an agricultural mafia. For her, these small farmers are just a smokescreen.
To cut trees and prepare the ground, you need money to buy chainsaws and gasoline. It's expensive.
These are people who have a lot of financial support.
This is a real organized criminal group trying to appear legitimate by setting themselves up as rural associations.
As she sees it, this mafia is clearly encouraged by the policies of the current government of Jair Bolsonaro.
When the Brazilian government wants to reduce conservation units, when it says it is not going to give an extra centimetre of land to the natives, when it votes laws against indigenous rights, it is a very clear message sent to the invaders and to the local politicians who want the reduction of parks and who actively work against us. The message is, crime actually pays.
These denunciations resulted in death threats, and she's not the only one. Environmental activists, prosecutors, law enforcement agents. In the state of Rondônia, the law of omerta reigns. On condition of anonymity, only this former environmental police officer agrees to speak to us.
The big landowner doesn't set foot here. He sends armed people who do the job for him.
Behind these invasions, he says, are big farmers, entrepreneurs, politicians and state officials.
If they manage to grab land, that's the jackpot for them. Because once the local government legalizes, as it is doing now, then the price of land soars. And the government is also responsible, because it has cut funds and personnel for environmental defense, while invasions explode. We searched phones and discovered exchanges between this mafia and a congressman.
Among those implicated, Colonel Cristóstomo, an MP close to Jair Bolsonaro and deputy chairman of the Environmental Committee in Parliament. He's suspected of using his Brasilia connections to help the invaders, charges that he denies outright.
I am totally opposed to any form of invasion. It is a crime. And the authorities must take drastic action and oppose those who do this. I cannot say that the invasions have increased here, because I do not have the data at hand. But I can assure you that the government has the situation under control.
In the local legislature, the powerful agricultural lobby makes no secret of its intentions. Here is lawyer Renan Maldonado, received by Alex Redano, president of the Rondônia Assembly. Following his recommendation, 100% of the deputies voted in favour of the law that regulates invasion of public lands.
We want people to be able to have their land so that they can cultivate it.
With close connections to agro-business, Redano pledges allegiance to the sector.
There will be a great economic leap when Rondônia regularizes these lands. We MPs also support big farmers, those who produce soybeans. This is very important for our economy.
Around this table, these local politicians too are suspected of being in cahoots with the agricultural mafia.
Let them go and investigate to see if the small farmers are really cultivating their own land. That is what should be investigated. I totally refute any kind of political intervention in favor of this mafia. Here we defend those who need it most.
The new law seeking to reduce the size of parks has been temporarily suspended by the Court of Rondônia, which ruled it unconstitutional. But on a national basis, similar laws are being discussed, supported by Jair Bolsonaro. COP26 brought a sudden halt to the process. But for how long?
And we'll continue to watch the situation in the Amazon, where campaigners trying to save the rainforest say they're getting regular death threats. Our correspondents Fanny Lauder and Tim Vickery with that report. You can see it again, of course, on our website, france24.com. That's it for this edition of Reporters. Stay with us. Most of all, please stay safe.